The briefing room smelled faintly of coffee, gun oil, and sweat. The walls were lined with maps of distant mountains and deserts, dotted with red pins like open wounds. At the long oak table sat 6 men in crisp uniforms, their medals flashing under the fluorescent light. And standing at the far end, her boots just inside the doorway, was Private Elena Marquez, a 22-year-old supply clerk who had no business being in that room. Her palms were clammy inside her gloves. She wasn't even supposed to speak, but when the general asked for volunteers for the upcoming mission, her mouth had betrayed her heart. "I'll go," she had said. The silence that followed was heavier than the sandbags outside the barracks. One colonel actually chuckled, covering it with a cough. Another, less courteous, leaned back and shook his head, muttering something about kids playing soldier. Elena's chest burnt. She had worked in the armory for months, handing out rifles, replacing firing pins, keeping the weapons spotless. But no one had ever once thought of her as a soldier. To them, she was just the girl who filled out inventory sheets. "Private," one of the majors finally said, his voice dripping with condescension. "This is not a supply run. This is a strike mission. Hostiles, long range. You don't even qualify." The laughter started again, not loud, but sharp enough to sting. She felt every smirk like a blade. Her eyes darted to the floor, but her voice, surprisingly, didn't crack. "Sir," Elena said, steady, "all I'm asking for is a rifle." That stopped them, a request too bold to ignore. The general at the head of the table, a stern man with thinning silver hair and deep-set eyes, leaned forward. He had been silent the entire time, letting his subordinates cackle. Now, he motioned her closer. As Elena stepped forward, she felt like she was walking into a lion's den. Every stare pierced her. Every boot scrape sounded like mockery. The general gestured for her to lean down. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Black Talon, Mark," he said. Her heart lurched. That wasn't just a phrase. It was a legend, passed around in hushed tones by night watch soldiers. Black Talon wasn't a weapon, but a program, a test. Only a handful of soldiers had ever attempted it, and fewer had survived. The general leaned back, studying her face. "You want a rifle, Private? Then show us you deserve it." The laughter in the room quieted, replaced by curiosity. The mocking smiles faded. For the first time, they looked at her not as a clerk, but as a contender. Elena swallowed hard. She didn't know what Black Talon entailed, not exactly. But she knew one thing. This was her only chance. Her voice came out like steel. "Yes, sir." And the room, once full of ridicule, now hummed with a new energy, part disbelief, part anticipation. They had given her the door. She only had to walk through it. The next morning, Elena was stripped of her supply uniform. Instead, they gave her combat fatigues without insignia, a plain rucksack, and a single rifle case. "Open it," the instructor barked. Inside was a weapon unlike anything she had ever handled in the armory. Sleek, matte black, its scope was longer than her forearm. It was balanced yet heavy, meant for precision at extreme distances. The stock bore a single mark, a Talon carved in silver. Her breath caught. "Black Talon rifle. 3,000 meters, the instructor said. "Moving target. You get 1 hour to hit it. Miss, and you're done." Around her, half a dozen soldiers, men she recognized from the briefing, snickered again. One muttered, "She won't even load it right." Elena ignored them. She knelt, unzipped the case, and lifted the rifle with reverence. It felt alive in her hands, its weight grounding her, its design whispering promises. The range stretched endlessly before her. At the far horizon, a drone hovered, darting back and forth like a mockingbird. That was her target, 3,000 meters away. The instructor raised his whistle. "Begin." Elena dropped prone, her cheek pressing to the stock. She adjusted the bipod, her hands steady despite the pounding in her chest. The scope magnified the horizon, the drone flitting in and out of view. Her breathing slowed. In her mind, She returned to the countless nights she had stolen time at the base's training range. She remembered aligning sights until the world disappeared into a single point of focus. No one had ever asked her to do it. No one had noticed. But she had trained anyway, in secret, because she wanted to be more than invisible. She fired. The sound cracked across the valley like thunder. Soldiers behind her scoffed. Way short. Elena ignored them. She adjusted for wind, recalibrated her scope. Fired again. This time, the drone wavered midair, as though startled. A near miss. She heard one of the lieutenants go quiet. Her third shot left the barrel like a promise. For a long, breathless moment, there was nothing but silence and the faint whistle of wind. Then the drone exploded in a flash of sparks. The range erupted. Gasps, curses, disbelief. Even the smirking colonel from yesterday stepped forward, his jaw slack. Elena slowly rose, lowering the rifle. Her heart pounded not from nerves now, but from exhilaration. She had done it. The general himself appeared at the edge of the range, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't smile, but his eyes gleamed. "Black Talon, Mark," he said, voice echoing. "Consider yourself initiated." The soldiers around her were no longer laughing. They were staring. And Elena knew this was only the beginning. They didn't even give Elena a day to savor her success. By dawn the next morning, she was loaded onto a convoy headed east toward the mountains. The mission briefing had been terse. Recon and disruption. Enemy has entrenched artillery overlooking the supply route. Our platoon will advance under cover, but we need eyes. Black Talon will provide. Black Talon. That was her now. Elena sat in the back of the truck, the rifle across her knees, her rucksack heavy with ammunition and rations. Around her, the others in the squad gave her sidelong glances. Some were curious, others openly doubtful. One, a tall corporal with a scar across his chin, leaned closer. "You got lucky at the range," he muttered. "Field's different. Out there, the targets shoot back." Elena met his eyes. "I don't plan on missing." The corporal snorted, but said nothing more. The mountains rose ahead like jagged teeth, their ridges shrouded in mist. The convoy stopped at the base of a ravine, and the squad disembarked. The lieutenant pointed toward a ridge. "Marquez, you're with me. Set up overwatch." She nodded, heart pounding, and followed him up the incline. The climb was brutal, rocks shifting underfoot, the weight of the rifle dragging her down. By the time they reached the ledge, her arms trembled, but she forced herself steady. She unfolded the bipod, nestled the rifle into position, and peered through the scope. The world shrank to the magnified image of a distant valley. She saw the enemy emplacement, 3 artillery pieces camouflaged under netting. Soldiers moved like ants, hauling shells, checking sights. She whispered into her radio. "Eyes on." Confirmed 3 guns, approximately 100 personnel. The lieutenant crouched beside her. "Your call, Marquez. Can you thin them before we move?" Elena exhaled, her body aligning with the rifle like it was an extension of herself. She adjusted for range, wind, and elevation. She picked the officer first, the man giving orders near the central gun. She squeezed the trigger. The officer dropped, his body jerking as the shot echoed a second later. Chaos rippled through the camp. Soldiers scrambled for cover, shouting. Elena already had her next target lined up. Another shot. A gunner slumped over his artillery piece. "Good hits," the lieutenant muttered, eyes wide. The enemy fired wildly into the mountains, bullets ricocheting off rocks nowhere near their position. Elena stayed calm, cycling her bolt, her breathing measured. Every shot was deliberate. Every shot landed. By the time the platoon advanced, half the artillery crews were down, and the survivors were panicked. The squad stormed the position with ease, detonating charges that reduced the cannons to rubble. When it was over, Elena descended the ridge, her rifle slung across her shoulder. The men who had doubted her stared as though seeing her for the first time. The corporal with the scar stepped forward, expression grudging. "Not bad, supply girl," he said. "Not bad at all." Elena only nodded, but inside a fire burned. This wasn't luck. This was what she was meant for. That night, the squad camped in the ruins of an old outpost. The fire crackled, casting shadows on broken walls. The men ate in silence, exhaustion weighing heavy. Elena sat apart, cleaning her rifle with the care of a surgeon. She could feel their eyes on her, studying, measuring, reevaluating. Respect was building, but so was something else. Curiosity mixed with unease. Finally, the lieutenant approached. He squatted by her side, his face lit by firelight. "You know what they're saying about you back at command?" he asked. Elena shook her head. "They're calling you Black Talon Mark II. Her hands paused. "Two," the lieutenant nodded. "There was another. Years back. The first Black Talon. She didn't make it. Rumor is she could hit 5,000 meters, but the mission broke her. No one's spoken of her since." Elena stared into the flames, the weight of the words pressing down. She wasn't the first. She was a replacement, a shadow chasing a ghost. The lieutenant leaned closer. "Some say the program is cursed, that they train you until there's nothing left but the rifle." Elena swallowed hard, forcing the doubt down. "Then I'll prove them wrong." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You might just." Hours later, long after the others had fallen asleep, Elena lay awake beneath the stars. The cold bit through her blanket, but it wasn't the chill that kept her awake. It was the voice of the general whispering, "Black Talon Mark." It was the laughter of the men in the briefing room. It was the ghost of the woman who had come before. She turned her head to look at her rifle, resting beside her. Its silver talon caught the moonlight, gleaming faintly. "Not cursed," she whispered to herself. "Chosen." Her grip tightened around the stock. Whatever the Black Talon truly was, whatever price it demanded, she would pay it. Not because she had to, but because no one would ever laugh at her again. And so, in the ruins of that forgotten outpost, Elena Marquez swore an oath. Not to the army, not to the generals, but to herself. The oath of a sniper. The oath of survival. The oath of Black Talon. The dawn mist clung to the valley like a shroud as the squad advanced. Elena walked at the rear, her rifle wrapped in canvas, her eyes sweeping the ridgelines above. The lieutenant had briefed them. Intel suggested the enemy had begun planting mines and ambush points along the supply corridor. Their job was to clear the path, or die trying. The valley was narrow, the ground uneven. Every step echoed too loudly against the rocks. Elena's instincts prickled. She'd been trained now to read the landscape as if it were a map of intentions, and something about this stretch felt wrong. "Hold," she whispered. The corporal with the scar scowled. "What now?" She pointed to a patch of earth where the grass grew unnaturally uniform, too fresh for the season. "That's not right. They've buried something." The lieutenant crouched, studied the ground, and gave a sharp nod. "She's right. Mines." The squad froze, sweat dripping in silence. Carefully, the engineers moved forward, probing with rods. One by one, the hidden explosives revealed themselves like deadly teeth in the dirt. As the team cleared a narrow path, Elena climbed a rocky slope to set her overwatch. Her rifle scope scanned the ridges, and there they were. Shadows in the mist. Enemy spotters, rifles poised, waiting for the squad to blunder into the trap. "Contacts, High Ridge, 11 o'clock, she whispered into her radio. Permission was instant. "Take them." She steadied her breath, her finger curling around the trigger. One shot. A shadow crumpled. She cycled the bolt, fired again. Another fell, his rifle clattering against stone. The survivors dove for cover, panic fracturing their ambush. The squad surged forward, clearing the valley with explosives. Rocks shook. The mines detonated in controlled bursts. The enemy fled, but not before Elena marked 3 more through the fog, each falling to her precise fire. When it was over, the path lay open, though scarred by blackened craters. The squad regrouped, their faces pale but alive. The corporal approached her, shaking his head. This time, there was no sneer in his voice. If you hadn't seen it, he didn't finish the sentence. Elena simply nodded, but inside she knew. She was no longer just proving herself. She was keeping them alive. That night, as they camped on safer ground, whispers rippled through the squad again. Not mocking now, not doubtful. They were whispers of awe. They were whispers of fear. Black Talon had become more than a code name. It was becoming a legend. The alarm tore through the base just before midnight. Harsh sirens, searchlights flickering, boots pounding across the compound floor. Elena bolted upright from her cot, her rifle already in her hands before her mind caught up. The east wall, someone screamed. They've breached it. Elena sprinted with the others, the cold night air stabbing her lungs. The outpost had been quiet for days, too quiet. Now, floodlights revealed the nightmare. The outer wall had collapsed in two places, rubble spilling inward like a broken dam. Through the smoke, enemy fighters poured forward in a wave, their shouts and gunfire echoing off steel and stone. The squad rushed to their firing positions. Elena scaled a half-fallen guard tower, glass crunching under her boots, and dropped behind the sandbags at the top. From there, she had a wide view. The floodlit chaos, the enemy advancing, the defenders scrambling. She didn't hesitate. Her first shot cracked through the night, striking the lead fighter. The recoil was familiar, grounding. She cycled the bolt, fired again and again. "Black Talon!" someone shouted below. "Hold them back." Her squad took positions at the gate itself, fighting at close range, but Elena knew they wouldn't hold long. The enemy had heavier weapons. A truck mounted with a cannon rattled toward the gap. She exhaled slowly, her world narrowing to the scope's crosshairs. The truck's gunner rose, sweeping the barrel toward her squad. One trigger pull, his head snapped back, and the gun fell silent. But the truck still rolled forward. Elena adjusted, aimed lower. A second shot rang out. The driver slumped, the vehicle swerved, and with a deafening crash, it slammed into the rubble, blocking the breach. The squad cheered, their voices ragged with adrenaline. But the battle wasn't over. More fighters poured in, climbing over the wreck. Grenades arced through the air, detonations rattling Elena's teeth. She gritted her jaw, kept firing, each shot precise, surgical. Her arms ached, her throat raw from shouting commands over the radio. Hours blurred into minutes. The smell of cordite and blood coated her tongue. At one point, she glanced down from her tower and saw the corporal, the same man who once doubted her, pressed against the gate, reloading with shaking hands. He looked up, caught her eyes, and nodded once. It wasn't just respect anymore. It was trust. The attack finally faltered before dawn. The enemy, bloodied and broken, melted back into the hills. Silence fell over the outpost, broken only by the groans of the wounded and the crackle of small fires. Elena climbed down from the tower, her body trembling, her hands stiff from recoil. The lieutenant clasped her shoulder, his face streaked with soot. "You held the wall," he said. "If you hadn't," he stopped himself. He didn't need to finish. She wasn't just Black Talon now. She was their shield. And tomorrow, she knew, the enemy would come again. Sleep evaded Elena. Long after the others had drifted into exhaustion, she lay awake, staring at the glowing embers of the fire. The lieutenant's words echoed in her mind. Black Talon Mark II. The first had failed. But how? And why did they choose her to carry the mantle? She rose quietly, slinging her rifle, and climbed the hill behind camp. The stars hung heavy overhead, silver fire across the velvet sky. She rested the rifle across her lap and closed her eyes. That's when the whisper came. Elena. Her eyes snapped open. Nobody was there, but the air felt colder, heavier. She gripped her rifle tighter. Elena Marquez. The voice came again, softer than wind through grass. It wasn't a ghost, it was memory. a story someone had buried clawing its way back. She remembered what the general had said when he handed her the rifle. This weapon already knows what you can do. Elena shivered. Whose hands had it known before hers? The next day, as they marched toward their rendezvous, she pulled the lieutenant aside. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "About Black Talon one." He hesitated. His jaw tightened. "You really want to know?" "I need to." They walked together, boots crunching gravel, the squad a few paces ahead. Finally, he spoke. Her name was Captain Elena Torres. She was the best sniper I'd ever seen. Could hit a coin at 2 miles. They said she was invincible, but his voice dropped. They sent her on a mission no human could survive. Lone overwatch in hostile territory. 48 hours without relief. She made the kills, all of them, but when they went to retrieve her, he stopped. What happened? Elena pressed. They found her still alive, but broken, starved, frostbitten. Her mind, he tapped his temple. She never came back. They kept her in a facility until she disappeared. Some say she took her own life. Others that she's still out there, living like a ghost. Elena felt the ground tilt beneath her. The rifle on her back weighed 100 pounds. "So why me?" she whispered. The lieutenant's gaze was steady. "Because you didn't flinch when they laughed. Because you have the steel. And because someone has to finish what she started." That night, Elena dreamed of Elena Torres. She saw her crouched in the snow, eyes hollow, hands shaking as she pulled the trigger one last time. She woke with tears on her cheeks and her rifle clutched in her arms. But there was no fear left, only resolve. If Black Talon one had fallen, Elena would rise. She would not vanish into the shadows. She would carry the weight of the name, and she would carve her own story into the silence of the battlefield. The oath she had sworn in the ruins deepened into something sharper, harder, unbreakable. Not cursed, not chosen, made. The night wind howled through the valley, and Elena whispered back into the dark, "I am Black Talon." The next night, the valley was too quiet. No sirens, no shadows moving in the floodlight's glare. Elena sat on the wall with her rifle, eyes straining against the darkness. The squad was bone-tired. Some slept where they sat. Others stared blankly, too drained to speak. Only Elena kept moving, scanning, waiting. Then she saw it, a flicker of movement at the far ridge. Not an army this time, just a single figure. She lifted her scope. Her breath caught. It was a woman. Tall, thin, draped in ragged camouflage. Her hair was streaked with gray, her eyes hollow but sharp. She held no weapon, only raised a hand in a strange salute. Elena's chest tightened. She didn't need an introduction. She knew who this was. Black Talon 1. Captain Elena Torres. Elena lowered her rifle, heart hammering. Torres' lips moved silently across the distance, and though no sound carried, Elena understood. Finish what I could not. Then, like a ghost, Torres turned and disappeared into the darkness. The silence shattered a heartbeat later. Mortar shells whistled through the night, detonating inside the outpost. The enemy had returned, their final assault. Chaos erupted, walls buckled, fire roared, men screamed. Elena scrambled to her post, firing into the dark shapes rushing the breach. Her squad fought with what strength they had left, but the tide was heavier than ever. Her scope found the enemy commander, shouting orders from the rear. She exhaled, steadied her hand, and pulled the trigger. The shot tore through the night, the commander crumpling mid-sentence. The enemy's wave faltered. Confusion rippled. The lieutenant seized the moment, rallying the squad. Push them back. Elena fired again and again, each shot driving the enemy further into retreat. Her squad surged forward, bayonets flashing, reclaiming ground inch by bloody inch. And then, silence again. The enemy was gone, their commander dead, their morale broken. Elena collapsed against the wall, chest heaving, her cheek pressed to the cold stone. She didn't know if it was victory or survival, but it was enough. At dawn, As the sun rose over the shattered valley, the general himself arrived. He walked the ruined walls, his eyes narrowing at the devastation, and then at her. "You carried the gate," he said simply. Elena didn't answer. She just adjusted her rifle strap, the weight of it no longer crushing but familiar, almost comforting. Behind her, the squad began repairing the wall with bare hands, stacking stone upon stone. They worked not because they had to, but because they still could. And Elena, the girl once mocked for asking for a rifle, stood at the gate as the sun broke the horizon. Not a shadow, not a ghost. Black Talon reborn.